friend, and we would like to talk to you about a video that Pinecreek, that's Doug, Pinecreek Doug had with a young Earth creationist named Kyle. Rosemary asked for this, and we all seconded it, and that kind of thing. And then we looked it over, and oh my gosh, it's long. It's like it's a little over 2 hours long. So we're going to skip a stone across the top of it. And we very well might end up with a two-part, because if we expect that our normal ratio of screen time covered to commentary time goes, this is definitely going to be a two-part. We're not going to go past 2 hours. Ideally, we hit 90 minutes, but we'll see what happens. Good morning, Moonshoes. So, in a review show, do we bother to introduce ourselves, or we just cut right in?
I like introductions.
William, introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm William. I'm an international rock star, philanthropist, and international fashion icon. My YouTube channel is Inspire Reflection.
Excellent, excellent, excellent. Rosemary?
Hi, I'm Rosemary. I'm a mother of cats, and I enjoy participating in the street epistemology community, and I have a fun day job.
Matt?
I'm Matt. I don't have a channel or anything, but I enjoy street epistemology and using it, and enthusiastic about it. So I enjoy these shows.
Mm-hmm. And as if he needs any sort of introduction, Reid?
Hello, I'm Reid Nicewonder from Court of Curiosity.
There you go. Okay, and you all know who I am. You can ask me later if you have more questions. Any commentary before we start the video?
I think I watched this. I did see this, but it was quite a while ago now, and so it's going to be an exercise of remembering it as much. So I think that context is useful when we're watching these things. It's a juicy one.
Okay, and remember, if you want Reid to pause, give visual signals, so that we don't have to listen for what's carefully in the video or not.
Yeah. Alrighty, ready to go. Are we starting at 2:30, or is that a good place to start?
42. That's the first place to. Well, 2:30 is fine.
Okay, here we go.
If you're on Twitter, he normally has Twitter Spaces, but he is open to any argumentation. But yeah, check him out.
You know, one thing I don't like about Jay Dyer, just to be honest, is he never smiles.
He smiles and sings. He's a jack of all trades.
Really? He sings?
Yeah, he has this song Gossiping. You haven't heard of it? I can play it.
Yeah, let me hear him sing.
He's really good.
While you're looking for that, hey, welcome, guys. This is an impromptu live stream.
I pray that God makes the music not work, so we don't have a copyright problem.
Viewers can hear it though, but maybe just put a link in this chat in the whereby, and I can.
Yeah, Pinecreek said Jay Dyer doesn't smile, and I said Jay Dyer smiles all the time. He can sing. Search up Jay Dyer's song "Gossiping."
Well, if he's a good singer, my respect for him goes up.
Yeah, I'll play it real quick. I think you'll be able to hear it. Let's see what. Can you hear it?
No, not really.
No copyright.
So the claim,
Yeah,
just for context, and the claim is Jay Dyer is a good singer. That's what this is setting out to.
This whole video.
This is good. Okay, gotcha.
2 hours on that. Wow.
Okay, why don't you just tell everybody a little bit about yourself?
So my name is Kyle. I have 2 YouTube channels, one Christian Simplicity, where I talk about minimalism, living below your means. That channel is more focused on lifestyle. And then Kyle, my channel, is more about debunking atheism, the Darwinist fairy tale, Protestantism, Catholicism, basically any false belief that is not Eastern Orthodox Christianity.
Okay. You know, we should start with talking about what we have in common, what we agree on.
Yeah.
I do think you made the comment about Protestants that they technically just came a couple hundred years before Mormonism.
Yeah, no. Yeah, it's literally, you can just start your own church, just start a business church. You can make your own little cult. Protestantism is just basically a bunch of mini cults and business churches. And I get why no one in the West wants, they're like, I'm an atheist, because those options aren't very good. They're false versions of Christianity.
And another thing I think we have in common is you talked about consumerism with Rebecca a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a big believer too that you should live below your means. You shouldn't get caught up with the culture of buy, buy, buy. You should save your money. It's okay to sit on cash. Your goal should be to try to be as least dependent on others as possible.
Yeah, financial freedom, having enough passive income where you aren't a wage slave.
Yeah. So often, some people in politics, they want other people to be dependent on them because then they can get votes.
Exactly. It's all about making you a slave to the system, a slave to the world. So, yeah, I think Christianity is the ultimate freedom from their system.
Yeah. And the thing is, I'll just pick on. I'm Canadian.
Did Doug just agree?
The US is
That seemed like an odd point of agreement there.
Not sure he's agreeing, but I do think Doug does a good job of this. Where often in conversations, he'll start by focusing on points that they have in common, things they probably agree on, even though they may disagree about the particular topic they're talking about. And this is, of course, the basics of rapport building, right? And you can see it happening here.
Yep.
Yeah,
100%. Yeah.
Agreement on something that's meh is fine if you're just picking your battles.
Yeah.
Yeah,
There's
that
so many
definitely is
claims.
what.
Oh, go ahead.
No, you go, Rosemary.
I was just gonna say, there's so many claims you could jump on here, but then you'd be ruining the rapport building.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's nice to. I guess it might be nice to explore. In some ways, you could ask. I don't know whether it would be worth considering asking the ideas of why do you think these are not true? Maybe in doing so, you could sort of define some standards by which the next part of the conversation could be held to. But I think you're right. I think conceding to building the rapport here is useful.
Yep.
If the Democrats are successful, they actually push themselves out of a job, because if they educate the populace in a way that people are educated to the point where they don't need the government to help them, they lose votes.
Exactly. It's a bad system because they are only going to thrive if there's more and more welfare. That's why they try and keep everyone down. They try and keep you just where you're at so you can never achieve actual fulfillment and freedom, because then you wouldn't vote for them. You'd be free, and that's not what they want.
Okay. So you like me now?
Well, I don't think you're I don't think you're consistent at all. I don't think conservative. What does it mean to be conservative atheist?
Yeah, well, that's a good question, and people have different definitions. And I don't really like to talk about politics too much, even though I do maybe 10% of the time on my channel. But let's get into the real important stuff, like our eternal destinies.
Yeah.
Because that's what it's all about, right?
Yeah, but first I want to talk to you about. So let me guess, you believe in natural rights, and that we have these rights because of the Constitution, right? And you can't violate those rights. Is that what you believe as a conservative? You
can violate rights.
Okay, so.
But then there's consequences from society.
Okay, but do they have any actual meaning? Is there anything actually wrong with anything?
Oh yeah, I would say yes, based on my standard.
Okay, well your standard is completely arbitrary. It's ad hoc.
No, it has reasons.
Okay, what are the reasons?
Okay, so let's take a certain action one human can do to another human, like a really bad one. You pick.
What's really bad? You said bad. What's bad?
Yeah, no, it's defined, bad is defined based on my standard.
Okay, but your standard's completely arbitrary. I would say abortion is objectively evil. Why is that wrong?
I'm against abortion too, but
wait, why?
I wanted to say something.
I do.
Yep.
There's something going on here. I think actually there's two things going on that are interesting from a street epistemology point of view. But one of them is that Doug has a lot of experience doing these discussions with people who have strong religious views, right? And I think Doug kind of knows that there's going to be some presuppositional apologetics going on, and so he's happy to talk about his own views, right? But he's going to give answers that are going to make it difficult for Kyle later on in the conversation to make his arguments for presuppositional, religious belief. And so he's straight up. He's like, yeah, no, it's my morality is based on my standards, and he doesn't mince words about it, right? And I think he's being honest. Like, it's not that he's being like not genuine. Like that really is his view here. But I think later on he's going to make an argument that probably your morality is also subjective, right?
We'll see. Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree. He's not being tricky or covert or anything. He is aware of the audience that he's speaking to, well, specifically Kyle, and forming his answers, knowing the path they're headed.
Yeah, and this is what kind of makes this maybe not what we might say is almost like a clean example of SE, in the sense that Kyle has got a channel where he talks about religion. He has a reputational cost. He has a investment in being an apologist in this space. And Pinecreek has got a similar reputation and a similar position, and they both have clearly had experience of each other's positions, arguments, and so they're clearly skipping a lot of steps. So they're referring, Kyle's referring to Doug's position, Doug's referring to his standard. None of it's being judged arbitrary before it's even been explained what that standard is, or they're all skipping ahead. They're these sort of chess players that are making like the first 10 opening moves very, very quickly. Which kind of makes this not particularly easy to follow, perhaps, for some people. But it's certainly not something we should do if we're talking to somebody whose opinion we're not as familiar with. We should try to go more slowly than this. But this is content.
Yeah. 2 hours is way too fast. Wait, no.
Yeah, and there is some, and that's kind of what Kyle's doing here. He's assuming like the views that Doug has, and actually Doug isn't exactly agreeing with it 100%. He's trying to explain how, well, that's not quite right, or that's not how I'd see it. But we'll come back to that later.
And just to pop in, because it's going to come up pretty soon, this was the part that kind of was like why I was like, this might be a good one to do, is because he just keeps making these assumptions. And I remember when I was first watching, I'm like, wait, did they have a conversation somewhere else? Like, is that what he's referring back to? Or is it completely ad hoc? And as far as I can tell, it is pretty much ad hoc.
I didn't ask for your feelings. I asked for why.
So what you could ask is, what is my standard?
Yeah, what is your standard?
So my standard is basically I use ideas of well-being, unnecessary suffering. So if I see something, and I can subjectively choose that standard, and then when I see an action that goes against that standard, I can say it's objectively wrong.
No,
there's something that happened just then that I think is really subtle, and,
yes.
and I really commend Doug. Kyle was very discourteous. I didn't ask for your feelings. That's a very direct, accusational, harsh, and unpleasant way of addressing somebody. And Doug, in response, slowed down and was more careful and clear. Just very, very good.
And one other thing he did, which I thought is worth mentioning, is he gave him guidance on how to continue the conversation more politely. Well, what you could ask is, how do I determine my standard? Right? That's a good SE question. Right.
Yeah. It was really, I think everybody's been in a conversation where we felt the pull to match the tone, let's say, of our conversation partner, to the extent that it degrades the conversation. And I really do have to commend Doug on not biting here.
Yeah. If you were to take a drink every time that Doug down-regulates the pace of the conversation, it's bad. Don't do that. Keep going.
It's just your opinion.
No, it's sort of like saying, I agree, I fully admit that my choosing of my standard is subjective. But it's sort of like saying, okay, I define an apple as red, and this is just a crude example, and I see a green fruit, and I say, okay, if that's my standard without any exceptions, then that's not an apple. I can objectively say that.
So you believe in objective truth and objective reality. How do you have knowledge of objective reality?
Based on my presuppositions.
What are your presuppositions?
My presuppositions is the universe exists and has the properties it has.
How do you know that?
It's a presupposition.
Oh, okay, but why is that your first presupposition?
Because it comports to my properly basic belief.
Why is that probably basic?
Because it's something that we all share and experience.
How do you know that we're actually experiencing something? So you're saying
Based
that
on my presuppositions.
I want to say a couple things
but
here.
that's just-
Yeah.
First, of course, like for those who are familiar with like apologetics or or counter apologetics, right? You'll notice a lot of the words that Doug's using are like hinting at he's basically making the same argument that he's expecting his conversation partner may make. But that's interesting. What's more interesting is notice how Kyle is asking questions, good questions, like why this, why this, why this, and Doug is showing no emotional reaction. He's just calmly answering them slowly, not getting wound up, right? And that helps. I think to a degree, Kyle will mirror that, right? When he's in the opposite position.
I think it was. So go ahead, Reid.
In very short, concise answers.
Yeah.
Modeling what he wants back.
Yep, modeling what he wants.
And this is the advantage of this is like why I was describing it as chess earlier, because these are practice moves. Like Doug knows where the attack is coming from, or and so there's something very artificial about all of this in the sense that it's all structured. Now, the reason I think Doug can remain calm when responding to questions in this way is because he knows how his position. He's really thought about how his position should be explained and should be articulated, and is using careful choices of language. All of this kind of thing is making it much more difficult for Kyle to then later jump on some small clumsy phraseology or something that's going to undermine the position. It feels more combative though already. This whole thing it's a zero-sum game. There's a fight going on, just like chess itself. That it's not collaborative under any stretch of the imagination.
I
but
agree.
this is just the nature of this kind of discourse. But yeah, very good stuff.
Yeah, direct counter apologetics lowers your Archer score. Mm-hmm.
Yes, indeed, absolutely.
it's a circular argument. You're
Is
saying
it?
that, yeah. And because you're a classical foundationalist.
Yeah. So, but I would say it's virtuously circular.
Okay. But the thing is what's well-being on your system? Do you know the history of skepticism? Do you know who David Hume is, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Do you know the is-ought dilemma? You cannot derive an ought from an is. You said well-being is happening or suffering is happening. Suffering ought not to happen. That's arbitrary.
I'm not big in philosophy, so you're gonna have to slow down a little bit. Like, what do you mean by you can't get an ought from an is?
Okay, so on your system,
There's one thing I wanted to mention here was that I talked to Doug about this, and he mentioned to me that he felt bad about this. He felt like he was not being genuine here because he does know about the is-ought dilemma. He is familiar with the philosophy. He says, I'm not big into philosophy. The truth is he knows quite a bit about philosophy. But I think he was trying to deploy a little bit of a tactic here, which is by saying you're not sure, Kyle has to explain what he thinks or what, like he has to explain the philosophy. And I think later on, I guess Doug said in the comments, like Kyle was confused because he felt a little bit tricked. He's like, I thought you didn't understand like the is-ought dilemma, but here you're like later on. So like Doug legitimately felt bad about this. He felt like he shouldn't have done it this way.
That's cool to hear. Actually, I did think that when I watched this video, I thought that was clearly a bit of a sort of a sort of slightly phony move almost. But I think another way he could have achieved the same thing without needing to inherit the sort of the cheap move feeling would just be to ask, I think I understand what that is. Well, I'd like to hear your understanding, right? And in doing so, you're not really presenting a false position of your own understanding. You just, for the sake of the conversation, maybe it would be that what do you understand this to be, and let's use that.
Yeah, and it seems like he was also appealing to wanting to slow down to make sure we're not getting too competitive.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. And Doug still handles things like a lot more cordially than like if he were in another call-in show and he was coming with assuming what the host knows. Like even if he feels like he tricked him and he feels bad, he was still reacting better in the moment because he may have been a little bit reactionary in how he reacted, but it wasn't extreme.
Right.
Every system can explain what is happening in the world, but from that you can never derive how the world ought to be. You cannot derive normative statements. It will always be a non sequitur. It will always just be a subjective taste preference, arbitrary, ad hoc. So suffering is happening, suffering ought not to happen. I can just ask why.
Okay.
That's arbitrary.
Oh, I see what you're saying. So I can't tell you, for example, that you should do something based on my presupposition.
Well, it's not just that you can't tell me. You can't even tell anyone. You can't tell yourself. There are no ethics on your system. You have a system that has denied the possibility of ethics.
Now, how does your
That definitely felt like a landmine was being placed for later wandering. As in, if we say that we cannot say what should be done based on a presupposition, that's just sitting there in this conversation. That's like Chekhov's gun. This is the first act where the gun is on the table. It's definitely going to go. When you see it be sort of tightened up like that and left there for later, again, this makes this feel like a combative experience and not collaborative. But still well played. Still,
I think you paused it right at this really good calibrated question, but Doug is, I think, in the middle of asking, which is. Well, you let him ask it. I thought it was a really good calibrated question.
Okay.
You can't even tell anyone. You can't tell yourself. There are no ethics on your system. You have a system that has denied the possibility of ethics.
Now, how does your worldview circumvent this? Because can you get a ought from that God is?
Well, yes, because in the Christian paradigm, there is objective morality. There are objective.
So you can't
ethics.
get an ought from an is.
Well, yes, because we have objective meaning, but not on your system where it is totally subjective and arbitrary.
Can I ask why? Okay, so you can get an ought from an is if it's your worldview, but not mine.
No. Okay, you're misunderstanding. My worldview, I believe in objective ethics. You believe that it's all subjective.
What do you mean by objective ethics?
That exist outside of us, just like the apple is objective.
Okay, but why one ought follow that?
Because we have a worldview, we have revelation that is given us a worldview that can account for ethics. There are no ethics on your system. It's completely arbitrary. It's ad hoc.
Okay, but what if someone were to say that your ethics is arbitrary?
Well, they're not. They're objective. It's like saying logic.
But what makes them objective?
Because they come from an objective source. They come from objective meaning.
Okay, but what if I were just to say that my objective, I actually don't believe in objective morality, but what if an atheist was to say that their objective morality comes from an objective source, the universe?
Oh, how do they have knowledge of what the morality is from the universe? Okay,
from their properly basic beliefs.
What do you mean by that?
It would be akin to revelatory in your system.
No, because we have a normative authority. It has been written down. We have the oral tradition. You're just arguing.
Okay, so this is the difference. This is the main difference. If it's not written down in an oral tradition, then it's not objective?
No, but I'm saying that objective truth exists and objective ethics do exist. They exist outside of my mind. They exist outside of your mind. They exist in the divine mind, God.
But why should one listen to God?
Because God is all good. Now, why should anyone believe you? There's no reason to follow the truth.
I really, again, it's so commendable how careful and slow. He's not mirroring Carl's energy here. Carl is still being quite disagreeable and pointed and direct. He's making arguments from, I guess, incredulity in some spaces. Like it seems like the rebuttal, and it's kind of, it could be easy, I think, to fall into the trap of laughing at that or getting drawn into its sort of tone. But yeah, I think Doug is doing a fantastic job of just really carefully, step by step, just sort of methodically walking through it and trying to use Kyle's arguments as a framework for, evaluating his conclusions. And I think that's really, what this is about.
Yeah, I think he did a good job, like really understanding what Kyle was saying too. He was rephrasing it in a way that was pretty clear, I think.
Yeah.
So that was good. And what you said, I think there's better examples that we're going to look at in just a little bit. So I'm going to hold off on commenting here.
True or false?
Yeah, I agree. Like I would say because I could give reasons, maybe
What are your
shared,
reasons?
maybe shared goals. So let's say you do not want to be raped, and I don't want to be raped, and so now we see a person who wants to rape both of us. We can say, look, we don't want to be raped, and my guess is the raper doesn't want to be raped. Maybe I don't know, maybe he does or she, but when we have shared goals, we could say, hey, if we share these goals, then we can make this as a standard of this is what we don't want a society to do.
So you're saying truth is determined by human consensus.
Well, I do think that sometimes it is, but sometimes it isn't.
But does it exist outside, or is it just always up to human consensus? If everyone agreed that Christianity was true, would that make it true? If everyone
No, I agree with you there. And does it make it true that if I think I can fly, that I can jump off a cliff and fly? I agree with you. But
That was a weird.
It
It
is
was a
true
weird
that you're
equivocation
wearing.
there. There wasn't a claim of truth. It was just a claim of consensus. The truth was it was a consensus, and then Kyle said, "Well, that doesn't make it true." Well, I don't think Pinecreek at any point had suggested that made it objectively true in the world. Only that it was, objectively true, if anything, that there was a consensus that we didn't want to do this. And it felt like a false equivalency there almost, where we swapped what we were talking about was true.
A different. It's true for you that you're wearing a floral patterned shirt and not me. I'm not wearing.
Yeah.
That's the type of subjective truth, right? Because it's based on the subject,
no.
you and me.
I know, but it exists objectively outside. These aren't just humanly constructed realities. There's a reality that exists outside of the mind. It exists in the divine mind, and it has to be personal. Otherwise, we wouldn't have access to it. That's how we know that truth actually exists. Logic,
That's
whether we like
interesting.
it or not.
How do you know truth exists?
Because it was revealed. How do you know truth exists?
Well,
You have no.
This actually happens a number of times in the conversation. This is the first good example of it, where Doug asks in my view, a good SE question, and Kyle, I think honestly, he's not doing it deliberately, I don't think, but he just doesn't have an answer. Right? He hasn't really thought about it, and so he just asks the same question back, basically, right? As almost like a maneuver to avoid having to answer the question.
Yeah, this is a classic example of the fundamentalist principle versus potentially the liberal principle of the decision-making principle between truth and opinion. So, a classic debate here.
Yep.
No criteria. It's an arbitrary criteria.
I would say things like, I believe that when I drop this pen, it's going to fall downwards towards the ground.
Mm-hmm.
Now, is that true?
Is it? I'm asking you. Do you believe that there's objective reality?
I'm asking myself too. Am I right? Is this true that if I let go, it's going? Well, then why don't we check? And why doesn't a Muslim check? And why doesn't a Hindu check? And why doesn't a Jew check? And you know what? If we all get the same conclusion, I think we can say maybe that our belief is based on something true.
Mm-hmm.
That's reasonable, right?
It's reliable. That also
Yeah.
goes into the problem of induction. You're saying that, okay, if we do this and it's repeatable, it should always be that way. If I always drop the pen, it will always go that way. But a perfectly logical person would not use inductive reasoning because it cannot be justified on atheism. You can never have epistemic.
Why does it need to be justified?
Should we skip at this point?
Yes. So
Yeah, they get into some unusual, more philosophical and kind of topics that maybe are not as interesting to review.
So to catch everybody up, I did write a summary of these chapters. This one says, atheists cannot presuppose the uniformity of nature without reference to God. That's obviously a Kyle claim. In the next chapter, how do you talk a criminal out of doing their crime? There are societal, social, physical, and these... Sorry, and Kyle believes the rewards and punishments are in the afterlife, and we can't be epistemically justified without choosing a pragmatic strategy. I think that might be Doug's claim. We get into a lot of hypothetical dodgeball in the chapter starting 2051. Hypothetical dodgeball on God could command an abortion. If you watch that, and I suggest you might, you will find him having to dodge and weave wildly to get around the question, which I think ends up in Numbers 5. And we learned that Kyle was practicing his dodgeball prior with Bread of Life, Rebecca. 2451, God commanding killing infants.
All right. This is as close as I could get to Skip. Here we go. Right now.
Yeah, verse 3. Can you read it?
Can you read it? I'm still.
1 Samuel 15, verse 3. Now go attack the Amalekites and totally destroy all that belongs to them. Do not spare them. Put to death men, women, children, infants, cattle, sheep, camels, and donkeys.
Okay.
Okay, so here's my question. I'm not talking about the Bible right now, but in general, if you were walking along the street and you see a man kill an infant, would you say that's objectively wrong?
In most circumstances, yes.
But it's not always wrong, is it?
Yeah, I mean, there's some situations where
Right.
it could be justified.
Okay. So in the case in 1 Samuel 15, when God says to kill children and infants, that's not objectively wrong, is it?
No, because God is ultimate goodness, and we may not understand it. Again, you need to read the Bible in its full context.
No,
you need
that's
to read
just
all
a
of
very
Samuel.
simple question. It's not
Yeah.
objectively wrong. So now
Well, no, it's objectively right, because God, it would only wills the good. God is
right.
goodness is
It's
health.
objectively right. In this case,
Yeah.
in this specific case, it's objectively right because God commanded it, right?
Yeah. It's funny to me because like saying you have to know the context is immediately admitting that it's subjective.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is this the case of special pleading? God is the special exception?
No, this is just divine command theory, right? It's,
it's God. It's good because God said so, or did it.
And I think Doug is, I mean, obviously he's trying to get them to notice, I think, a morally intuitive contradiction, right? With divine command theory.
The divinity is the specialness.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That allows them to do that.
Right.
Yeah.
So one thing that starts happening here, I made notes on it, is this is another example of like, I think this question really starts getting Kyle a little bit riled up emotionally. And he gets faster in his speech, and he gets more like insulting and almost ridiculing in tone. And the thing I notice is, Doug can obviously hear it, but he doesn't take the bait. And he basically ignores it and continues to just be slow and careful and calm in the conversation. And I just want to point out that can be very hard to do in a real conversation.
It really can, and I'd also say that if you're noticing your conversation partner is starting to become less charitable, more aggressive, more frustrated, etc., it just, as well as the overhead of not mirroring that tone, it's really good to try to extend empathy to the fact that that person's clearly struggling in this, and that might be difficult for them, right? Like, and this is kind of maybe a difference here between doing this in the context of the stream here, and maybe doing this as a conversation in a kind of more formal SE or standard SE context, right? Because if we see our conversation partner is starting to get emotionally charged, engaged, or concerned, that's probably a good time to like leave it with them, like let them take it away and process it before and then come back with questions and responses, rather than put further pressure on them and maintain the conversation. That's not a criticism of Doug. This is clearly a different type of format here, but it's definitely something, I think, as well as not rising to it, try to be empathetic to the fact that they are being uncharitable because they are feeling attacked and they are concerned about that, and that's not a nice feeling for anybody to have to endure.
Yeah, is that
Okay. So now if God commands the abortion of a baby in a woman, I'll ask you again, is it objectively wrong or objectively right?
Well, this was the history of the Israelite people. There's a bunch of context behind it. If I got a voice in God in my head saying, "Oh, kill that baby," I'm not going to listen.
But you notice
to
how
that.
easy it was for you to say this objectively right in 1 Samuel 15:3, but you're still struggling with the abortion question?
Well, do you not understand that has context, and you're just giving me some
The
random
context is God's
hypothetical?
commanding it.
Oh, okay,
What
but
more
again,
context do you need?
No, because there's hundreds of years of context behind why these events happen. And like, what is this? Are you? What's the point of this? Like on your system,
The
there
point
is
of
no
this is to
evil.
show that under your system, whatever God says, does, commands, wills, decrees, is right by definition. Am I wrong?
It's objective morality that was revealed to us. On your system, it's always arbitrary. It's just your opinion.
Okay, so good. So I think we're agreed that under your system, basically, what is objectively good is based by definition of what God says, does, decrees, wills, and so forth.
In continuity, yes.
Yeah. Okay. Then, but here's the problem I have. The problem I have is if someone.
Two things I wanted to say. First is just with what he just said, that was an excellent example of restating what Kyle is saying and having him agree with it. Right. And that may seem like no big deal, but actually that helps repair rapport a little bit because he knows that Doug is still listening. Right. And Doug is not, and he's just like calmly restating and Kyle agrees. Right. So that's good. The other thing I wanted to say is I think Doug does a good job with questions like this. Like he'll phrase questions like, do you notice how quickly you answered X, but how you're struggling with Y? Right. I think this is a good SE question because it helps the person like focus on their reasoning and their epistemology, like maybe helping them reflect like, oh yeah, why am I didn't notice that, but why am I having more trouble with this question than the other one, right? Like it could be that they don't actually recognize that until he says that in the question, right? I think that's a good question for like encouraging reflection on what you're saying.
Completely agree. Yeah.
Someone doesn't believe in your God and they're told, well, this is objectively wrong. And they say, so what? What do you do? I mean, it's like, how do you improve society? The only thing it really does is it maybe gives Christians like this gravitas, this oomph, like it's wrong because my God says so. No, just take it. Otherwise, it's just your opinion. But a guy like me could say, well, why should I listen to God's opinion?
Well, yeah, you have free will. Society has only gotten worse. Do you think society has gotten better? You've probably seen this in your life. Look at now we have more abortions, more STDs, more broken families, hookup culture, promiscuous
more
sex.
Abortions compared to what?
Compared to compared to no abortion, it used to be banned.
But you realize the last 20 years abortion rates have gone down?
No, I know, but I'm saying that it used to be illegal, and yes, it went up. It had a spike, but I'm saying if you go back, America used to be a Christian country. It used to actually be a good moral place to live, and then now we've completely abandoned God, and people are like, "Oh, we don't need God. We can do it."
Completely
and now we have people
abandoned God? 65% of the United States at least call themselves Christian.
There's several things I want to say about this. There's a lot going on in this interchange here, but I'll just limit it to maybe like the top three things. First is, Kyle is giving an example of the cognitive bias called declinism, which is things are getting worse. The old times were better. And it's okay. Like that could be true with certain things or not. But I will say that that's more common. That's a common view, say, among social conservatives. I'm neutral about whether it's true or not, but like it is a bias that some people have. Secondly, this is not good SE in the sense that Doug keeps pointing out facts that are contrary to his position, right? So like, Kyle says, having more abortions than ever. And Doug says, did you know that abortion rates are actually down over the past 20 years? Or Kyle says, and now no one believes in God. And he says, actually, did you know that like 65% of people still believe in God? So like these are actually examples of things not to do in SE, right? But one is Doug can get away with it partially because of the format and partially because this is more the nature of the kind of the discussion they're having. But there are also like sub claims embedded in there, right? So like he made a claim that like abortions were, I think, 0 back when it was illegal, which personally to me that seems like unlikely. But but you could like even just get derailed on that topic if you weren't careful to not like, go down that path.
This is probably going to sound kind of slightly condescending. I get the impression that Carl is quite a young lad, and the moral declinism argument tends to come from an older generation, and it's a feeling I think you get as you get older. In any case, there are plenty of examples of sort of the curmudgeonly older, sort of commenting on the youth of today, etc., and saying everything's all gone to hell in a handbasket. But actually, there's a lot of evidence to suggest this isn't actually the case. That things generally have improved. Stephen Pinker's "Better Angels of Our Nature" is a good book in this space, although often mocked. But yeah, when I hear somebody of Carl's age make this moral declinism argument, or I don't even know if he's framing it specifically about morality, but this declining nature of society argument, I get the impression that this is a position he's been given. He's been told by somebody older than him. He's heard this as a talking point, and you often hear this sort of thing coming up from the pulpit and being directed at the young congregation specifically to get them to recite it and really believe it. They genuinely believe it. Like they internalize this idea that the world is falling apart and we're all doomed, and that Christianity is really the only thing that will save you, or replace Christianity for whatever's being sold here.
Yeah, and it naturally joins with conservatism, because like conservatism, at least like traditionally defined, is like we want to keep the structures we have because they work well, right? And things, if we don't maintain them, things are going to fall apart. Things are going to get worse, right? And there is truth to that. Like there's actually truth to that idea, right? You do want to have things that maintain themselves. But yeah, I think you're right. I think he is young. I think actually Doug commented on that. Like he was interested in this conversation because he was so young. That it's like he felt like Kyle almost like doesn't know what he doesn't know about things, And
I guess that. Go ahead, Rosemary.
I was just saying, it strikes me that he doesn't really have a lot of historical knowledge about the history of abortion and like just how many people were dying from abortions because they couldn't get them legally and all of that. Like it's a sort of black and white thinking, I think, that helps reinforce the position he wants to take, rather than really delving into the history and understanding it from the objective facts that we know.
Yeah, and I guess one of the components of this red flag of noticing that these are perhaps talking points that have been given to him rather than have been ones that he's noticed about the world and has reflected on and generated himself is that you might when you're talking to somebody who's sort of giving you talking points back, it's very difficult to. There's the adage, isn't it? You can't argue somebody out of a position they've not been argued into, as it were. You can't use facts to dissuade somebody of a position that wasn't based on facts to begin with. He wants to believe this is true. He needs to believe this is true. He doesn't really have the underlying epistemological justification for the statement. He's just accepted it as a truth, which makes it difficult to use epistemology to sort of chip it out. You basically need to undermine the authority that gave it to him, and that can be quite challenging because that no doubt comes with an awful lot of other things that have been told by that authority. So yeah, it's just an interesting thing to notice.
Yep. Here we are on a street epistemology channel, judging him by the methods and standards that we as a community see for street epistemology, and we are right. But Doug will admit that what he's doing does not follow the standards of street epistemology. So later on, when some of us are on a panel on the counter-apologetics channel, we don't have one of those yet, we will be bashing him for not hitting harder and not being way too nice. What's all this rapport shit? You took 2 hours to get to the point and tell him.
I'm not sure, but yeah, if there's going to be another stream later where we get to bash Pinecreek, I'm signing up for that one now.
Yeah,
I'll put you on the list.
Pinecreek not bashing him is what made this whole conversation bearable, because it was very hard to keep watching. I did want to turn it off because I was turned off by Kyle, but I watched it, listened to it, but.
Yeah. I really dislike how much I'm liking Pinecreek.
Doug, that the turn off to Kyle isn't enough to make me disconnect. Doug, it's not sexual. Trust me. It's
all all right, moving on.
It doesn't matter, because the actual church attendance and the actual people that are living this way, because even a lot of Christians are super liberal. I mean, we have people who don't even know what a woman is because of people. They're just like, oh, it's just what I feel because this is what atheism results in. Atheism is liberalism. Oh, you have to believe in
atheism
God.
Is a cause of that?
Yeah.
Maybe it's paganism.
Oh, yeah, definitely paganism too.
Yeah, I would say because there's
Definitely.
Isn't there more pagans than atheists in the United States?
Well, I mean, when I say atheist, I mean like unaffiliated, agnostic, atheist, anyone who's just not practicing a religion. I'm saying our society
A lot
has
of
got.
agnostics will be mad at you if you call them atheists.
Okay, whatever. They live like atheists. They live like atheists. That's what matters. A lot of Christians live like atheists. I mean, I'm just saying you're saying that it's better off. There's no better off on your worldview. It's just your opinion. I have an objective criteria. You just
right,
have your
but you get
opinion.
what I'm saying, right? I'm saying that if someone can say the same thing about God, it's just God's opinion.
It's okay. That's like saying, oh, well, logic's just God's opinion. You could say that, but it doesn't. It means that it still exists outside of you, whether you agree. I mean, there's people who say, oh, well, I don't believe in women. Anyone can be a woman because reality can be whatever I want. Because this is what atheism leads to: postmodernism, will to power, and just complete philosophical suicide.
This part where he's attaching all these other things to what atheism is it was just one of those things where he's trying to tell someone else what they think without knowing their background.
Yeah.
Doug handles it very well.
He does. I do apologize. I laughed out loud when he said anybody could be a woman. I just there's something about that slogan which I feel like I want it on a t-shirt somewhere. That's great.
I think that should just be our motto from now on.
Anybody could be a woman.
Kyle told us. Yeah, Kyle told us that's what we believe.
I want an anybody can be a woman t-shirt with pneumatic inflatable breasts built into it, so I can turn them
And you got to
on.
spell it with a W-Y-M-E-N.
Sure.
I'm hearing two very strong psychological motivations because he said there is no better off in your worldview, and that reminds me of this: having a way to deny the existence of death. Like ultimately, that is one thing I heard, and just all of this in general is just a way to make sense of good and evil.
Yes.
Like, so.
Yeah, I get the impression that Kyle has constructed, well, partially the reason he holds this view is he feels like he is one of the good guys, right? And all the other people who don't share his moral philosophy are all the bad guys because they have no good way to justify it, right? And this is why all these bad things are happening. And we are the few people who are holding back, the Goths at the wall or the barbarians, right? At the border, right? Like that's kind of like that's the sense I get he has of how important this is to him.
I would be very
cigarettes.
I would be very surprised if Kyle was new to Christianity. What the tone, the rhetoric, he seems to shift between different modes of speaking. One's more dialectic, more conversational, which can be terse, but is sort of more engaged. And then in moments he sort of is almost at the pulpit. He's preaching. And that shift. It's quite dramatic. So I think he's replicating something. He's copying something that's not really coming from him. It's almost like it's trained. He's sort of channeling his teachings or what he's been brought up with, and I think it's interesting to notice that there's almost two sides to Kyle that and you can almost hear the two different voices speaking at some moments.
Yep.
Okay, you want to shift to science now?
Sure. I mean,
because we've kind of beaten morality to death here.
Yeah, but I'd say you need to look up, you should read the skeptics, because the route that skepticism went down is a question. Atheists can never be epistemically justified in their claims on ethics, on metaphysics, and this has caused the abandonment of philosophy, which is why instead of doing philosophy, we have Stephen Hawking and Neil deGrasse Tyson. Don't do philosophy. It's a waste of time. And now they say, science can explain everything. And they try and explain everything with psychologism and physics. But there are things that are presupposed for the possibility for knowledge at all that cannot be epistemically justified. And every atheist is arbitrary.
Can you epistemically justify God?
Yes.
How?
God, the revealed God is a necessary precondition for we experience a certain a universe with
Again, just real
temporal-
quick, just notice the difference in tone between Doug and Kyle. It's like
Oh, yeah.
night and day, you know. And Doug is not perturbed by any of the, you know. It's just it's commendable, I think.
spatial
Yes.
relations, with essence, with metaphysics, with
Yep.
the uniformity of nature. All of these things presuppose a certain type of metaphysic. It is not the Far Eastern metaphysic. Oh, it's all a contradiction. It's all solipsism.
What type of metaphysical thing does it presuppose?
The revealed God, a metaphysic where there is objective truth, where there are all these things that are strung together on a golden pearl, because they all work together. If you deny any one of them,
Can you imagine no God existing and the universe still existing?
No.
You can't imagine it.
No, because I mean, you've denied telos. A universe requires purpose.
Can you imagine a universe existing with a God but not a revelatory God?
No, because how would we have access to anything like logic or physics? We need a personal God, because the divine mind, truth, exists outside my mind and your mind. We have access, so it has to be a revelatory God.
It has
God
to
is
be.
revealed.
It couldn't be a God that created the universe and then just sat back with folded arms and watched.
Absolutely not. No, it's the impossibility of the contrary. That's why transcendental
Why would it be
argument.
impossible?
Because again, if you deny any of these, it destroys the possibility of everything.
God created the universe with the laws of logic and the preconditions for intelligibility, created all that, but then just let the ball roll down the hill and didn't reveal anything about himself after that.
Because this was the God that was revealed to himself in history. And you should look up transcendental.
No, but I'm asking, why is that impossible, what I just said?
Because it's like, okay, you have a cake. If you deny, there's preconditions for a cake. If you deny the milk, the eggs, and the butter, it's not a cake.
You're not denying the eggs, milk, and butter. It's already there.
You are. You're denying.
All you're denying.
Makes me think of, if you want to create an apple pie, you first must invent the universe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's God.
Yeah.
A lot of this is like, oh, go ahead, Matt. Sorry.
I was just going to say, I mean, you've been hearing it, but these are classic SE, like hypothetical thought experiments, right? Can you imagine God not existing was the first, and the answer was no. Which, okay, I mean, that's interesting. But then can you imagine existing with a God, not a revelatory God? Why would it be impossible? Notice, like, Doug focuses on this question for like 2 minutes, because this is like really the key. Like, why is it impossible, right?
I think there's just a real feeling difference here. Like, you know, Carl seems to be offering an awful lot of argumentum from and that seems to be the sort of position he's in. But whenever he's answering any of Doug's questions, he's just reaching outside of the conversation. He's bringing in talking points. He's bringing in external examples. He's saying you should go and read this, or this has been dismissed. It's all external to the conversation, whereas everything Doug is doing at the moment is within the conversation. Doug seems present in the conversation and is in the dialogue. He's trying to talk to Kyle.
Yes.
And Kyle is very much not present in the conversation. He's parroting and parodying or representing other people's views. He's bringing in stuff from the external. He's just reaching away, and I think that's just really interesting to notice.
I think in just a few moments, I have in my notes that Doug is going to say something to the effect of, I really want you to imagine this with me. Like, this is good SE. Like, let's imagine this together, right? And he sets up this whole scenario, and then I'll talk about maybe some of the technique stuff a little bit afterward. But just I want to focus on this kind of hypothetical he sets up.
Okay. And just I wanted to say something about Kyle. I remember when I was in my 20s, I probably would have had I would have answered, no, I can't imagine the universe without God. Like, because the one reason that I held on to a God belief for a long time was I couldn't imagine things coming to an existence without the prime mover concept. Mm-hmm. So, but then that was when I could, that's what broke it. That's what broke my God belief. So.
Right. Yeah. It's a very powerful argument that religious people have, I think, is that I don't have an alternative complete solution for everything. and that means I have to let go of certainty and conviction. Which I can't imagine how difficult that could be to let go of if you think you have it.
Yep.
Did anything after providing the milk, eggs, and butter?
Well, I mean, that's like, but then it wouldn't be a cake. It wouldn't be a universe. It wouldn't be the universe.
No, universes exist. So, okay, really imagine this with me. I want you to stay a Christian. I'm not pushing back. Stay whatever you want to believe, but let's just imagine together like philosophers for a second here. Let's imagine that a creator God exists. He creates everything that it needs to start to exist, yes. The laws of nature.
Deism, a clockmaker.
Yeah.
Made the clock, and then
So you got everything you need to think, to live, the laws of nature, but he chose not to reveal himself after that, after creating. Why is that impossible?
Because how would you have knowledge of that? How would you have knowledge of that if God never revealed himself? You're saying, how would we know about God if he never revealed himself?
Like Romans 1 says, just by looking at nature. Oh, okay, we know this creator God exists.
Exactly. So,
but this creator God chose to be silent. Maybe he'll reveal himself later, but at this point in history, let's just pretend in this thought experiment that all religions are false, God exists, creates everything that we need, and then sits back and will reveal himself 1,000,000 years from now. Why is that impossible?
Well, because maybe that is, no, this isn't really, it's just like a random hypothetical, because there's the revealed God and what actually happened. You can't deny that. You could hypothetically, but do you have good reasons to believe that God will reveal himself in 1,000,000 years? There's no reason to believe that.
This is a thought experiment. I'm simply just asking you, within this thought experiment, I see nothing logically impossible with what I just proposed.
There are all sorts of things that are logically impossible. We were talking about a paradigm, a worldview, a web of belief that can give an account for everything in the universe.
Okay, let's talk about why you think.
Pause it for a second. So what I wanted to say about that exchange with the, like, really imagine this, is that I thought that was a good example of a more advanced SE technique. Sometimes they call it alter casting. I like to call it assigning a role, where he said something like, imagine like we're philosophers, right? Like we're really think about this, right? He's like saying, just for a moment, forget about your belief in God. He even, like, he tries to reduce the stakes of the hypothetical by saying, I don't care, like, you can be a Christian, like, just for 30 seconds, let's consider this, right? Like philosophers. And by doing that, like, you're telling the IO, like, you're setting him up in, like, a thought experiment, or you're setting them up to, like, think in a way that is congruent with the thought experiment, right? And to maybe think differently than you otherwise would normally think, right? And that's the focus of the question. That's what he's really trying to do, right? And that's one of the maybe most important things about street epistemology, I think, is to engender that critical thinking, right? Like, you actually have to engage with other arguments than the ones you believe are true, you know?
Yeah, and I think the value of those thought experiments is it almost gives permission for you to, in theory, it gives you permission to think the unthinkable. You don't have to concede anything about your point. It allows you to explore the special case. And it was fascinating seeing the fact that Carl absolutely could not, like, he almost said that it could be possible, but then just couldn't bring himself to do it. And that really highlighted, I think, the nature of Carl's motivated reasoning. Like, he clearly is not even going to concede a hypothetical point in this space, and it's sad. I feel bad for the guy, to be honest with you. I think one thing that might have been useful from Doug maybe would be to recognize that we could. I think I don't know what Doug's view on this, but I think most atheists would agree that it's totally possible that the God of the Christian Bible is true. It would be absolutely bamboozling to me. It would be, I clearly don't think of it as a credible possibility, but I can't say that it's not true. I don't know many, I guess it's the hard atheism position, right, where you say you certainly know that there is no God. So I think conceding the point that, because all we're trying to suggest to Carl is that there may be alternative hypotheses. right, that fit the current circumstances and observed situation. And I think if Doug could do that in favor of Christianity, then I think maybe it might have helped Kyle recognize that it would be fair for him to do this on his side as well. But yeah, I can't fault really Pinecreek. I think he's been doing fantastically well.
Yep.
That God revealed himself in the Bible? Or do you think that?
Yeah.
Okay, why?
What do you mean why? That's just what he did.
Why do you believe that? What's your reasons?
Because it gives us a worldview that can give an account for everything, and that the Old Testament and the New Testament had all these prophecies that were fulfilled to a T. It was so specific.
Okay, you said two things already. Let's take them one at a time. The first thing you said was what? Something about accounting for...
Yeah, it can give an account. Your worldview can't account for what it assumes.
Okay, so that alone, would you say is sufficient reason?
What, if you can give in a worldview that accounts?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, it has to have good reasons to justify what it.
So
what
if someone from a religion that you deem false says that my revelation can account for everything, would that mean their God is real and true?
No, well, it's not. There's one God. All these other false religions. There's a difference. This is a word concept fallacy. There's a difference between gods and God. There's only one God, the Omni God.
Let's say they
and
believe
all these
in one
other
God.
false gods. Yes, no. These other religions are demons and idols. They are not worshiping the true God. They are worshiping something created. We worship the uncreated, revealed God, the Holy Trinity.
Okay, how do you know yours is the true God and theirs is the false God?
Philosophy, history, their metaphysics make no sense. I mean, like I said, the Far East, they say, oh, it's all a contradiction. Everything's an illusion. Everything's reincarnation. Reincarnation makes everything pointless. No Hindu is consistent when they're balancing their checkbook. They're doing calculus. They're not living like everything is just an illusion.
Couldn't someone from a false worldview look at your worldview and say, this is nonsensical, this is crazy, this is inconsistent?
Those are all arbitrary criteria, and that's why we debate.
Right, and when you say that to them, they say, well, everything you say is arbitrary.
But it isn't. I can give an
like, you do understand that there's many people in the world who will read the Bible and see it as inconsistent, right?
Well, yeah, that's why there's no such thing as a brute fact. You and I can see the same thing, but we interpret everything within a paradigm.
Okay, why do you think they see it as inconsistent? And do you see the Bible as consistent?
Yeah, the Bible is perfectly consistent in any error.
Why do you think you see it as consistent and they don't?
Well, because man has fallen. Our rationale was, I used to be an atheist. It wasn't a logical problem. It's really
I just wanted to say
hard.
This is another good example of Doug kind of controlling the pace of the conversation and keeping Kyle kind of in check, so to speak, because he was starting to get he wanted to start preaching kind of there, but Doug would just, he interrupted him, but he interrupted him with a nice calibrated question that really gets at the epistemology. Why do you think you see this consistent, but they don't? Right.
He's done it 4 or 5 times in a row as well. And actually, to Carl's credit, he every time has come back down and he's shooting back up there almost immediately, but at least they're still in the conversation, I think. But yeah, it's been really good to see Doug sort of just no, come on, back down a second. And Doug's very good at that in general, actually. He's very good at let's move this through methodically. Yeah.
We don't want to follow God. We live in rejection of God.
Right. So you're saying they don't see it as consistent because they're fallen.
Yeah.
But don't you believe you're fallen?
Yeah, I'm fallen.
Okay, so why do you see it as consistent? And why do you think they don't?
Because I submit to the church and I have good reasons to believe what I believe. And
what are those good reasons?
Because like I said, no other system can give an account for the metaphysics, for everything. Of the universe, and I can talk about the
that deist we just described earlier can.
Okay, you have no knowledge of that, and that is just a hypothetical. You could say, oh, we're hypothetically in a matrix. Okay, it doesn't do any good. There's technically anything is possible. We're talking about what actually happened.
Okay,
revealed them.
How do you know God revealed himself through the scriptures, the Bible? How do you know that actually happened?
Because the New Testament is the best recorded document in the ancient world. I have a book on it by Craig, I forget what his name, but it is the best recorded document from the ancient world. So if you want to deny history...
Can something be the best recorded and still false?
This is really nice. I remember this.
I mean, there's certain level. It depends what your level of certainty is. You can only be so certain about certain things. In the level of certainty, I have a high level of certainty.
Right, but can something be the best recorded in history and still be false? So imagine Hinduism was the best recorded. Let's say it's not, but let's say it was. Does that make Hinduism true?
No, not the brute
Okay,
fact.
good. So we can put best recorded on the shelf. What's another reason why you think God actually revealed himself?
That's not the same because
Someone want to say something?
Yeah, so many things. Good.
Really quickly, earlier he said there are no brute facts, and just now he said something about the brute fact that.
Also,
his epistemology is all over.
I also like the general approach that Doug is taking is just tell me the reasons, and we'll go through the reasons one at a time, like methodically. And okay, so now we're going to look at this reason, the scripture thing, best recorded. Okay, would you agree? Would if we took the same argument and applied it to something you think is false, would that be a good reason? No. Okay, well then maybe that's not a good reason. Let's put it. That's a methodical, logical approach, right?
Yeah, it's really smart because I think when the claim the Bible is the best recorded document in history is made, I think in an SE context, there's a strong temptation to challenge, okay, well, how do we know that it's the best, where are the reasons to go? Doug brilliantly doesn't do that. He goes for the real reason check.
Mm-hmm.
That's such a smart move in this space because it really is just a really clever way of not getting bogged down into the weeds of the inerrancy of the Bible. I was genuinely very impressed. I really hate having to say nice things about Doug, but this is brilliant. This is really, really good.
Because the best recorded, does it actually go with what the other sources say? Everyone, the atheists, the Jews, the pagans all confirmed that there was Jesus Christ was a real person and he did die. You're trying to arbitrarily say, oh, it's just like the Hindus, it's the best recorded. No, because the events in the
Who says that Jesus Christ was a real person?
Atheists,
No.
secular. Yes, the overwhelming amount of.
Do you know the
atheists
difference between
always say-
Jesus and Jesus Christ?
Okay, again, you're getting caught up on such little
No.
technicality.
This is not a little thing.
They just say they don't know.
Kyle, most people on the planet believe Jesus existed. Most people on
And
the
he did
planet
die.
most people on the planet do not believe Jesus Christ existed. Do you understand the difference?
Okay, yes, but if I'm saying they're not consistent because of all these messianic prophecies of everything.
Okay, so let's take prophecies. That was the second thing. What do you think is the best prophecy for that Jesus?
Oh,
this is
okay. So
revealed?
this verse in Isaiah literally makes no sense unless Christianity is true. Isaiah says, if you know the history of Judaism, it was only for the Israelite people. But Isaiah says that the Gentiles will worship Yahweh. So how exactly would that work? How exactly would a small religion, the Israelite people, how would everyone worship the Christian God? How would Jesus, it talks about the virgin birth, he was born in Nazareth, he's of the line of David, all these very specific things that literally make no sense unless Jesus was who he said he was. There's a book on this called The Case for Christ, where an atheist, he comes, he's very skeptical, and he sees there's no way to make the atheist system work. They aren't consistent.
Warner Wallace?
No, by Lee Strobel.
Oh, Lee Strobel. Right. I get these guys mixed up sometimes. Yeah, Isaiah 53.
Did you hear that shift in tone of voice there? That's exactly what I'm talking about. There's the preachy, the ranty. He shuts down and he's just outputting this stuff, and then Doug asks him a question, and then the tone of voice shifts in a heartbeat, and
just
he conversational.
Yep.
I see it a lot with people, and it's not unique to religious discussions. It's not unique to Christianity or anything. It's just something you at some points you are talking to a PowerPoint presentation that they've memorized, and you're not really talking to the individual. And I think just noticing when that's happening is really useful. And yeah, Doug's really good at he keeps bringing him back down into the conversation. He's not staying there for very long, but there's only so much that can be done, I think. But Doug is doing a frankly heroic job of keeping him in the conversation as much as possible.
Yep.
I mean, how does that make sense unless Jesus? I mean, this small religion takes over the entire world.
Has it taken over the entire world?
I mean, yeah, it's pretty much everywhere. It's everywhere. It's
What percentage of the world is Christian, or worships Yahweh,
around,
or acknowledges?
okay. So again, truth or falsity isn't amounted by the amount of people that believe it, but it has spread everywhere. Everyone knows.
You just said the entire world.
Yes.
Is that hyperbole, or do you actually think the entire world knows about Yahweh?
Well, okay. This is again. This.
Or do you really mean 95%? Or
not 95%.
So are these cheap shots? Are they niggle? Is he just? I mean, I totally get it, and I think it's unhelpful to let these statements just go out there and not be challenged. But at the same time, it does feel like he's sort of getting in some sort of liver punches in from the side here. He's just sort of a few light jabs rather than. It seems like we've sort of lost the main thrust of where this pattern was going.
Kyle keeps pushing back and saying you're being hyper focused on something that's trivial or irrelevant to the question, and then Doug's saying no, the difference between Jesus Christ and Jesus without Christ is a huge difference and not trivial.
Yeah.
And so at some level, Kyle is putting words in Doug's mouth, and then Doug needs to defend it a little bit. Now, whether that's SE, but it's effective.
Yeah, I definitely get the impression Kyle wants to say a lot of things and just put them out there and isn't really used to having them challenged in this way. And so Kyle's seeing it as nitpicking or like, picking up on tiny details. It's not matter. He doesn't want the words to be what's thought. He wants people to feel the emotion of how he's saying it. That he wants to be persuasive, and it's very difficult to be persuasive in that way if people are picking up on all the little inconsistencies, which is going to create frustration in Kyle. But I guess it's that frustration that I would be concerned about at this point, because there's been a number of these little let's challenge these things you've said, and I guess it might build some pressure up in Kyle there. But yeah, interesting.
Yeah, in an SE situation, I would consider those signs of somebody losing their enthusiastic consent to be in the conversation. So if I were just concerned for them, I would be thinking about backing out. Now, in the case where there's an audience and they're both public figures and they're both staying in, well, the rules are different. And of course, we're not following strict SE rules for that because of context.
Most people are it's like 25% of the world is Christian. Islam is a heresy that comes later that says Jesus is just a prophet. They believe in Jesus, they just don't think he was God, it's because
but it's
Muhammad
probably true the entire world and 100% of humans. It's probably true that they don't know Yahweh. There's at least one person out there who doesn't.
Okay, yeah,
right?
Okay.
I mean, so we can throw that.
Know them, but they know them in their heart. They know God in their heart.
They know, but do they know Yahweh in their heart?
Yes, they know the law in their heart.
Okay.
I always love that
usually
rebuttal.
do with prophecies is I ask a very simple question of how you would make this particular prophecy better.
Yes, but it's not a true Scotsman.
Yeah, the knowing it in your heart, you often hear it in the moral. How do atheists have morality? Well, because God gave it to you somehow, and it's there because of God anyway. It's such a frustrating talking point. Yes, it's a good true Scotsman argument.
You would make Isaiah 53 better?
No, I would say it's perfect.
You'd say it's perfect? Does Isaiah 53 mention a bodily resurrection?
I don't know in that specific one. I think it does in some of them. I mean, it has very specific. If you read the Psalms, it's all about.
Is there any
Jesus'
prophecy in the Old Testament that says the Messiah will rise bodily from the dead?
Yeah. I mean, I don't know it off the top of my head, but there are some. I mean, what does this have to do with?
Well,
I mean,
isn't the resurrection the most important part about Christianity?
Yeah.
And so I'm asking a very simple question. If the resurrection, the bodily resurrection of Jesus Christ is the most important part of Christianity, wouldn't you think it would be prophesied about?
Yeah, let me pull it up. Let me see.
This thought experiment
And
here.
I think you would know this off.
How do you make prophecies better? I just want to say this is a good SE question. It's along the lines of what would be better evidence than what you have, or what would make you more certain in your belief. It's a similar vein.
the top of your head.
Why?
Because this is the most important part about Christianity, and you mentioned prophecy.
So the Bible is a holistic document. It's conveying God's purpose for humanity. You're like, look at this little thing. It doesn't. I don't know.
This is not a little thing. This is the prophecy about the resurrection of Jesus. I'm asking about. Would you at least admit it's not in Isaiah 53?
No, the resurrection only has its meaning when it's given its context. Everything matters. There's not just the most important. Everything is important. The Bible is a holistic library of books. You're just picking it to say, I got you.
Are we agreed Isaiah 53 doesn't mention the bodily resurrection of Jesus?
Not in that specific. I don't know.
Because when I asked you how would you make Isaiah 53 better, you said it was perfect.
I'd be really tempted. I was talking on mute. I would be really tempted at this point to be concerned about his energy here, because Kyle is drifting into incredibly uncharitable territory. This is the sort of stuff where I think he would hopefully later come to really regret how he was acting in this moment.
Yeah, I think earlier Doug said that he thought that apparently he was on some live stream before this for many hours, and then he joined this conversation with Doug. So he was probably tired, and he didn't realize it, and especially towards the end of the conversation.
Yeah, I think in an SE context, it would be good to, if you're seeing anything like this sign of stress, frustration, and uncharitability is a great indicator for stress. I definitely would be looking to end the conversation almost immediately. It's clearly Carl at this point, I don't think is in a great frame of mind for this conversation. And you want to talk to people when they're at their best. You don't want to talk to their worst, them in their worst moments if you can help it.
Talk about
so are you admitting that Isaiah 53 is not perfect, or you could
that's like saying this one verse doesn't have every specific part of it in it. It's like every verse is important. You're trying to. But yes, it was the most.
If I ask Kyle, if I ask the question, can you make Isaiah 53 better? And if the bodily resurrection of Jesus is the most important part about Christianity, I would think that's the way you could make Isaiah 53 better.
Well, there's other verses that talk about the bodily resurrection.
I know, I'm talking about Isaiah 53.
Okay. Well, that's like saying, the most important part of the story, there's other context to
the most important part of the story is not in Isaiah 53, true or false?
It's not in that specific. Why does it matter? Because it's in other parts of the Bible. It's not in that. Does every verse need to say Jesus was resurrected? Jesus was resurrected.
I'm just saying.
He's not listening anymore. He's reacting to what's being said. He's not responding. It's emotional responses all the time now.
Yeah. If Doug asked for the best example of prophecy, he should give the best example of prophecy, which should have the most important part of Christianity in it. I think that's the reasoning Doug's trying to get to. Yeah.
Right?
No, because then and Isaiah is the Old Testament. You know what the Old Testament is? Why would it talk about?
Why would it talk about the Messiah bodily resurrecting?
No, not in Isaiah. It goes on about it. I'm pulling it up.
Oh.
Testament.
Do you like Mike Licona?
Who's that?
Okay, I guess that's a no.
Who is he?
He's I know you're Orthodox, but he's an evangelical historian, New Testament historian. And I have him on record as saying that there are no prophecies in the Old Testament that refer to the bodily resurrection of the Messiah.
Okay, he's an evangelical. You realize
that's a really unfortunate. I have him on record. Somebody you've not heard of make this claim. It does seem unfortunate. And again, what's Carl supposed to say to that? Somebody Carl does not know. It's not has contradicted his point.
About another minute here, then we'll skip forward.
Okay.
That's a false branch of Christianity. You're like, look at this person who doesn't even believe in Orthodox Christianity.
What makes it false, actually? I'm curious. You don't have to look up this, but we can just let that go.
Okay. You can look it up for yourself. Look up Jews for Jesus. It talks about the bodily resurrection. It's very specific about everything. And the resurrection only...
Did you say from Jews for Jesus?
I think so. I've never heard of that.
It's an
What an
organization.
odd,
Yeah.
yeah, that's a very strange
Messianic
reference.
Messianic Jews, the whole thing. It's a really big deal, and they're an interesting subset.
What an odd reference for him to reach to. I missed that when I last listened to it.
If you have all the context, you're saying, oh, if you just, why doesn't this context verse talk about the most important? It's not a good argument.
But why do you think like Christians like Mike Licona, who you don't know, but he's an evangelical Protestant Christian, would you say that, did you say it was a false Christianity?
Yeah, it's even. You told me at the beginning it only existed 500 years ago.
I know, but what
it's
exactly?
Innovation.
Just because it's newer doesn't mean it's wrong.
In the case of Christianity, yes, it does, because Christianity is a historic religion. We have the apostles.
Were you saying because it's newer, it's more likely to be wrong?
Okay, no, you're misrepresenting.
Because isn't Christianity newer than Judaism? No. So it's more.
Yep.
Therefore, Christianity is more likely to be wrong.
No, okay. No, Protestantism. Okay, so there's all these prophecies. They fulfill Jesus. Jesus is a fulfillment of Christianity. Protestantism is a heresy that comes 1,500 years later. Because Christianity.
But
could Jews say Christianity is a heresy? I think so. Yeah,
yeah, they could. They do. I think
they do.
Heretical about it.
It's about because they teach an entirely new gospel.
For example.
Sola fide, sola scriptura. They are anti-monastic. They don't even have a liturgy. They don't have incense. They don't have a priesthood. They don't have confession. It's totally wrong. If you want to understand, read this: Rock and Sand by Father Josiah Tremont. He was a Protestant evangelical who became Orthodox.
Okay, let's pick one of those.
You said they don't have incense. I've never heard an argument from incense before.
Gotta have that.
Go ahead.
Yeah, this isn't so much an SE comment, but like I love incense. I love the liturgy. Like I get that. Like it's a ritual,
right?
Yeah, the ritual and all that. But it's funny because as an Orthodox person, he seems a lot like the Protestants who become Orthodox because they're anti-Catholic. And I've picked up on it. But he's also so vehemently anti-Protestant. It's kind of hilarious.
Mm-hmm. I have in my notes to skip this section, to skip this chapter to 51-53.
Yeah.
My summary is that they talk about sola scriptura, oral tradition, scripture being the final authority. Some of the oral traditions were not written down, and those still count. And whataboutism, about destroying the world. Now, if that sounds interesting to you, don't leave the live stream. Look at it later. Watch this later. It's fun. Please continue.
Yeah.
Image of God makes that wrong.
Because we have an inherent dignity. What makes it wrong in your worldview? We're nothing. We're literally just evolved monkeys. Like where's the monkey value? Because monkey have value because we say monkey has value. I mean, it's
sure. You think that value only counts if it comes from God?
Well, it has to come somewhere objective.
Why does
not
it have
just
to?
Human constructs?
Why does it have to?
Because because otherwise it's just subjective. I mean, you could say that, but it's just
why
subjective.
Is subjective worse than objective?
What kind of question? Why is subjective?
No, seriously,
do you want to know what's actually right, or do you want to know someone's opinion? Like your opinion that I like survival. Okay, why? A lot of people don't. Should they kill themselves? I don't think so.
Why not?
Because they were made in the image of God. They were made for a purpose. Their life is,
I'm trying to get at what. Just because they're made in the image of God, why does that matter?
Because they have an inherent dignity.
Okay, and why does an inherent dignity matter?
Because that's where it has objective value. There is no value on atheism. There's objective value.
But why does that type of objective value matter?
That's okay because it's objective. It exists outside.
You see what I'm doing here?
Huge indicators of Carl's frustration here. That big sigh just then. He's being interrupted. I don't think Carl is thinking the interruptions are fair. Like I understand why Doug's trying to get him to move along, but because of where Carl is in this conversation, there's just no way it's going to be seen as charitable. I definitely would be looking to end this very soon at this point. It's like for Carl's sake as much as anything else. Like it's not about winning or losing. It's just about you want to try to have somebody have this conversation when they're at their best, and this is definitely not going to be Carl at his best at this point.
Yeah.
You basically are left with saying it's just so.
Because no, because you're arguing subjective presuppositions. I'm arguing objective presuppositions. So I can get to the foundation of your belief and show, oh, your foundation is arbitrary. Eventually, you're going to get to the end of the argument.
Right.
And there is objective.
That's what I'm trying to get at. That's why I keep on asking, why is this bad? Why is this bad? Basically, at the end of it, the only thing you can say is because God said so.
Yes, because it's been revealed to us that there is objective value. On your system, you just said, my feelings.
I'm not a feelings type guy. If you know me, like if I know you're new to me, but if I make a lot of atheists mad because I sometimes talk like you. I say, I say toughen up. I say the world's an unhappy place. It's tough. It's rough, and you know.
Why should we be tough though?
Well, if you want to survive, like you have to.
Why does anyone want to survive?
Some people do.
You notice how Kyle here, he's mirroring Doug's technique. He's questioning his moral epistemology. He's doing the same kind of grilling kind of thing. Yeah,
but it's mockery. It's not. It's parody. It's not. Which is a shame, because like, if he really had mirrored it, then this may have been a more productive conversation, I think.
That's why the attitudes might be more of a priority than the actual SE skill set and techniques. Having that attitude of collaboration and civility.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, that's a very good point.
So if everyone wanted to kill themselves and the universe, I mean, that's basically what they're doing. I mean, they're promoting mass depopulation, and the atheists are just going along with it. You can see the atheist birth rates. Atheism is the best form of birth control.
Atheists suck at reproducing.
They do, because it's a suicidal philosophy and ideology.
Why am I still alive, you think, if I'm an atheist?
Do you have any kids?
Yeah.
How many?
2.
Okay, that's good. Well, you are a conservative, so that makes sense. More conservative-minded people do put a value, but I'm just saying you're not a conservative.
That makes it okay.
Like I said, if you want to really...
What?
I think at some point he said, like, atheists are liberals, but then he admits it, like... Yeah. Anyway, his definition.
Yeah, atheism is liberalism, is what I remember him saying.
But why do you think I haven't committed suicide yet?
Because I don't know. You haven't. I mean, there's no point in committing.
Because I have an inconsistent worldview. Why?
No, I'm saying that you're.
Yeah.
Carl was an atheist, didn't he say earlier? Like Carl used to be an atheist, which slightly surprised me, because he clearly has taken on, I'd say, a lot of the talking points very well.
Atheist during 15 minutes of doubt.
Oh, okay. So I thought he said he was an atheist, which would lead me to consider that at some point, anyway, for a period of time, that he. I wonder what his moral intuitions and his, nihilistic intuitions were at that point in his life.
I might be misremembering. I almost expect that when an apologist says, "I used to be an atheist," it was for a very brief period between believing and doubting, and then believing stronger.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Used to be an atheist is like,
maybe.
If this conversation were more like William was saying, if it were a little bit more collaboration and working together, and not quite where it is right now, I think a good question for Kyle would be like if he could try to steelman the quote, what he calls the secular liberal worldview. Like what does he think? Because when he tends to talk about it, he tends to give a lot of straw man arguments about what the people believe and why they believe it. I wonder if he could do a better job of that.
That's a really good. That would have been great to hear, actually, hearing that steelman, or giving him that opportunity to steelman the position. Because again, there was something that it's all accusational, and then when unfortunately Doug's narrative of actually having children and not wanting to kill himself conflicted with the assumptions of Carl, he just sort of skipped over it and then labeled him a conservative, and therefore that's fine. Okay, that solved that problem. I think it would be, I think encouraging him to steelman would be great. I think that's a good idea, Matt.
Or just ask the simple, what's the second best way to meet these psychosocial motivations? How would you make sense of these abstract ideas and values without a God? What's the second best way to do it? And other ways like that.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the end result of your worldview. Is
Right, but
just
that end
there's
result
nothing.
seems like it doesn't make a difference because here I am.
Okay. But a lot of people are. You can look at Gen Z. They're lonely. They're depressed. The
But
suicide rate
I'm
is
not
going up.
lonely. I'm not depressed. You can
Okay,
ask
that's
anybody who
just-
knows me. I'm
Yeah,
actually
Poker tonight.
Okay.
the opposite. Like,
Well, that's
people actually get mad at me because I don't worry about things and not depressed about things. I literally can count on one hand the amount of times I've been anxious in my life.
okay.
Why?
Well,
I'm an atheist. I truly don't
Okay.
believe any gods exist, and yet here
Okay.
I am, happy and
I'm not saying you can't be happy or you can't do good things. I'm just saying you can never have justification because it's completely meaningless on your universe.
So
I mean,
maybe
you think
justification
the
is not
world
all that
is-
important.
only just-
Hashtag conclusion. Maybe we don't need justification. Maybe we could just do stuff.
justification I think you will accept is your worldview, right? Like if I say
Well,
something
yeah.
and let's say I try to justify my worldview, you will just knock it down and say, but that's not, it's absurd, it's not consistent, blah,
Yeah.
blah, blah. You'll just say that, right?
Well,
I've
unless
talked
you
to
have good reasons.
Kyle, I've talked to Christians who will justify their Christianity by saying they went to a Christian rock concert and got a certain feeling in their heart.
Well, that's basically what you're doing. You're saying I like survival. 'Cause I
Right,
feel
right.
it in
But
my
you're
heart."
saying that's bad, right?
Well,
That's not
I'm
a
just
good
saying-
justification.
Yeah, there's bad reasons to believe good things. That's the fallacy. Just because a lot of Christians suck at
Right.
debating
So I'm
does
asking,
not
what
mean-
is a good justification?
the transcendental argument for God? A transcendental argument.
Now we're going to skip that.
Yeah.
Good, good.
To when?
Thank you. Yes, yes.
To
The
102.
tag argument I have is a Jay Dyer commercial. I get why you're confused on that, but they are not the same thing. Metaphysics are required for words to exist, and only a divine mind can inform knowledge.
Did Jordan Peterson join the conversation towards the end? That metaphysics are required for words to exist. Oh my gracious.
Yeah. So 102.40, please.
102.40. 10.
You're a young Earth creationist?
Yeah, I don't believe in that Hindu fairy tale.
Why do you say Hindu?
Well, because it's just like the ancient Hindu fairy tales. Oh, there's a rock, and then it turned into a fish, and then a monkey. It's the same thing. And I mean, Charles Darwin was not some neutral fact seeker. He was
Okay,
the
how do you
agent
think
of
the universe came to be?
it was created?
Was it created from stuff or ex nihilo, or what do you think?
Ex nihilo.
Okay, so we had
You're-
nothing. So something came from nothing,
Yeah,
but God did it.
yeah.
Just quickly
Okay.
plant that
And,
flag there. Thanks. Just moving on. Just definitely bookmark that one for later.
Yeah.
Well, how did he do it?
I don't know.
No,
This-
like, do you believe the?
I want to say this question is an excellent question, and it's deeper than a lot of people realize because, like, a lot of say if someone believes in young Earth creationism, right, and they say, yeah, God did it, but like, how did He do it, right? It highlights the fact that the religious explanation doesn't really have much explanatory power, right? Yeah, God did it. How did He do it? Well, I don't know. Okay. Well, like now what, right? Because like there are things that we'd like to know, right, in the world. And it's interesting because I think you'll find from his explanation he doesn't really seem that interested in the fact that it has explanatory power. He doesn't really care, which means even if he were to find a contradiction, he wouldn't be that big a deal for him, I don't think.
The Genesis narratives in Genesis 1 and 2.
Yeah,
Okay, so you believe God created man, for example, from actual clay of the dirt?
something like that. It doesn't. I mean, it doesn't. See, you're getting hyper focused. Oh, look at God said clay.
I'm
It
just
doesn't-
asking what you believe.
It's a holistic message. So I believe this is what I believe. So I used to be a Darwin believer, but then I started to actually, question my assumptions. I actually had to take a philosophy of science class, and I saw, I had to debate evolution versus creationism. And what I saw was that evolution, the ancient Earth people have so many assumptions because what they do, if you know how they get the dating methods, it's a billion, and they change it every day. They're like, actually, we were 100.
I'm not asking-
This is gish galloping now. It's like all over the map. So we're going to challenge carbon dating methodology. We're challenging Darwinism. And what was the question that was originally prompting this? It's got Catherine Wheel like.
Forget.
Basically, like, how did God do it?
How
was the
did God
question.
do it?
Yeah.
And what did he say? I used to be a Darwin believer.
He did. He said, I used to be a Darwin believer. Yeah.
What an interesting way of phrasing that.
I want a T-shirt that says "Ancient Earth Peoples."
You what you don't believe currently. I'm asking what you do believe currently. So you believe.
I believe that the world is at least 10,000 to 6,000 years old. I have no idea if it's older. I'm just saying the methods that they use, they extrapolate on data. It can never be justified. We've never seen macroevolution. I understand what evolution is. The fine tuning, it's random. It's natural selection. It's just random mutations. I mean, Darwin saw like a finch's beak change. That's microevolution. That's a fine.
Okay, so you believe that man was created from dirt by God?
Yes. He was created
Do you believe
dust.
that?
Don't you believe the humans were made by stardust? We're all stardust.
Yeah.
So I mean, we believe the same thing.
So we have something in common.
Yeah.
So I'm just getting at what you believe.
What was
And
the
you
mud
believe
made out of?
that woman was created literally from the rib of man?
Yeah, Adam and Eve are really the first people.
Okay. And then you
Here it
believe
comes.
that humans started to repopulate or populate the earth?
Yeah, populate. There was
So
no human.
Adam had sex with Eve and had kids, and those kids had sex with each other?
Maybe in the first generation, but again, it's not getting hyper focused on. Oh, it's always again. God always wills the good. There may be.
Why is Doug making this point? Why is Doug making this point? It's such a cheap shot.
Yeah.
I don't know if it really gets him anywhere.
I think he is just trying to have some kind of ickiness going through his mind, just to get a little bit of cognitive dissonance going.
Yeah,
Just to lodge it, shake it a little bit.
Stir the pot as a.
And this part's so interesting, I want to not watch it. Please skip to 112:41.
Okay.
I'll summarize by saying they get to where did the water come from? And Kyle's answer is, well, the climate changed. And I don't get caught up in the details. So even the flood, anyway. And there is only one future, but Kyle's not a determinist. I think anyway, but we do have free will. Okay. Could you choose to die before or after God knew you would die? And they spend a good bit of time on that y'all can go watch otherwise. Continue, please.
You're up in heaven with Yahweh. And Yahweh says to you, Kyle, look at the mess down there. I'm going to have to exercise my justice. And I can do it either two ways. One, through drowning, except for Noah's family. Or I can just instantaneously poof them out of existence. They don't see it coming, no pain whatsoever, just poof, they're gone. And he's giving you, Kyle, these two options. They're both moral because God's giving them. And he asks you, I just want to know what you think. What should I do?
So, have you seen floods that happen so fast that people die instantly? That's happened before, right?
Sure.
So that's what happened. They died instantly. They didn't suffer.
Wow. Poof or drown. Oh, both. Ad hoc and without data.
I had forgotten about this part. I was fascinated by this theory.
I'm pretty sure I never made it this far into the video. I think I got lost at the Darwin point, but yeah. Wow. I really think that Carl's going to look back at this and regret some of the points and the tone and the manner in which he's engaging with all of this.
Both are good.
The thing is, it's clear that Kyle's very smart. I think, like, you can hear it just in how he speaks, and like his mind works quickly, right? But like, I think, like, you can use the same mechanism to like come up with kind of not really great justifications for the things you believe, and so and that it happens to everyone, right? Like, it's not unique to him. That's not but like you have to be careful about that. It's very easy to like come up with reasons that kind of are self-serving.
It's okay to say I don't know as well. Like, why did
Yeah.
God choose to do it? I don't know. Like, I'm more impressed when theists say something like that. Like, I don't know. Would you have done it that way? I wouldn't have done, but I'm not God. Fair enough. But Kyle needs an answer. He needs to be able to rebut this. It's a silly question coming from and he wants to be able to shoo it away, and so he's making up these on the fly arguments that just seem hilarious. Yeah, feel bad for him.
Yep.
So you're saying that no one treaded water?
No, they died instantly. It was. I mean, how much water it would take. It literally made the Grand Canyon because how much water there was.
Yeah, because
man, that means
you can't tread water in the ocean because that's science. We know that from science. Because there's too much water, so you definitely couldn't tread water in the ocean. That's just
pictures of people banging on the door.
Well, yeah, you went to some Protestant Sunday
Even
school, right?
didn't it take a while for the floodwaters to get past their head? Like, wouldn't they be panicking and suffering with just
it instantly killed them. That's another testimony to there was a worldwide flood. Is we have skeletons where people are like stuck in mid-action, the skeletons. And
wouldn't that shoot the ark into space? Like, if water came up instantly, then the ark would just instantly go up with extreme velocity.
And apparently everybody froze into place in all of this water, because what we know about water is it freezes things in place. That's another thing that we know about it. Is he confusing this with Mount Vesuvius and Pompeii? Is he? It feels like we know that they didn't suffer because they were frozen. There are skeletons frozen in place. This is hard to listen to, guys.
Yeah.
I mean, you can watch Is Genesis History. They go in depth in geological.
So does your belief that people were instantly killed in the flood? What if they weren't? Let's say it was a normal situation where the heavens opened up, water started coming down, and of course, it takes time for the water to rise, the levels to rise. And people saw what was happening, started to fear, emotionally, psychologically, they're seeing their impending death, and they start to cling onto branches and stuff and float, and then they realize, no, this is it. Water starts to fill their lungs. You're saying that didn't happen?
No.
What if it did?
Well, it didn't.
But what if it did? Would you think any less of your God?
Yeah, an argument from
no, because God's all good.
Right.
I mean,
if God is all good, then even if what I said did happen, then it shouldn't make a difference to you.
Yeah.
Right?
But that's not what happened. But yeah, you're right. So
you're saying that the ark actually went from sitting on the ground to immediately being mountains high up in the water. That took no time.
I don't know exactly how it happened. I just know.
Well, if people were to die instantly, like you're suggesting,
why doesn't he know that? But he knows what happens to the people. Like, where is it? Where is the information? I mean, that's an interesting conflict of resolution of knowledge here. Like, he seems to know exactly how the people didn't drown, but somehow were frozen in place in the instantaneous appearance of water, but doesn't know what.
I get why you're confused about that, because you don't recognize instant revelation. You don't.
Right, that's true.
You're not seeing it. You should look into his eyes, and you can tell.
I'm making a mistake here, clearly.
It's just a great example of rationalization. You have a strong moral intuition that this is not something that's good. God is all good. This is a conflict. Anything that pops in your head that rationalizes it will do at the moment.
Yep.
Yeah.
Go from sitting on the ground to being like maybe thousands of feet above water instantaneously.
Yeah. Or maybe that part didn't have, maybe it took longer time. I don't know exactly what happened.
I don't know.
I just know that there was an ark. There's an overwhelming amount of evidence there was a worldwide flood.
And why do you think, getting back to the science part of this whole thing,
was there a science part?
And you can tell Doug is just enjoying this at this point.
He's like
this is just fun.
Yeah.
He goes from all the speculation of this is what happened to. I don't know what happened. I love that.
So many Christians, Muslims, Jews, Hindus.
Or did we want to skip something, darling?
This is actually a good place to skip to a long ways because we're going to talk a lot about the age of the Earth. Let's see, our next skip is 14158. We're going to talk about the age of the Earth, anti-science, and conspiracy epistemology. They get all into the epistemologies to believe crazy things. That's interesting. Go watch it later. Then we get into we are animals. Maybe if we're just smart animals, we don't need souls. I think that was Doug's position. And no, there's no proof for abiogenesis, and that's my proof for God did it. Then we get to denying all of history. If you think that's juicy, oh, you got to check that out. But we're not going to watch it because it takes too much time. It's like history. And so he says, history confirms Jesus existed, so the rest of the Bible is true. That was one of the arguments. And then, paging the flying man.
Okay.
And actually, I'm going to skip it. I'm going to skip the martyrdom and eyewitnesses because it just takes a long time to build up to the flying man. So let's jump right to naturalistic.
How long is
the New Testament.
at the point that we're jumping to? How long has this been going on for?
We are jumping to 148:58, and it started at 2 minutes.
They were saying that he was talking for at least an hour or so prior to this on some other stream. Is that right? So he's like 3 hours into like back to back.
And he talks to Doug for 2 hours, 7 minutes, something like that. And we are in the last fourth.
Okay, here we go.
We have all these things. That we have a priesthood. We have the laying on the hands. We are the continuation of Judaism. Judaism is
Okay,
the new religion.
I understand it's a
Christianity
continuation.
is not a new religion.
Okay, if it's not a new religion and it's a continuation of the laws and so forth of Judaism,
Yes.
what did they do to lepers in the Old Testament?
That was the Old Testament Israelite law. When the new covenant came, he clarified the law because the Pharisees were so obsessed with the law that they had lost the meaning of the law. They rejected the lawgiver when he came.
So the answer you could have given is they put them outside the city gates.
Yes.
Right? What did Jesus say about lepers? You don't do that.
Yeah. So again, it's a fulfillment of the law, a clarification.
So
why did they have those laws? It's because God needed to create the preconditions that the Israelite people would not die. It was a brutal ancient world. And so yes, he had these laws, the Leviticus laws, that seem very strict. But Jesus comes and he clarifies those, and he is a fulfillment of those.
I view that clarification as something new. That's what they call the New Testament.
No, because it is the
new.
fulfillment of the. Okay, it's new. That's a word concept fallacy. New isn't the
just
same
like Mormonism was new, just like Islam was new,
because
but
they don't
it
have
shared some past themes.
No, they don't have any continuity. Do you know the history of Islam? All the events in the Old Testament happen, and then the Quran comes 500 years later. Islam's don't have a liturgy. They don't. Their Quran has the Trinity in it.
How much later did Christianity come after Judaism? 500 years later.
What do you mean it continued to happen? There's a continuity. This is Judaism.
Right, but you can't say Islam is more likely to be false because it's 500 years later, no more than Christianity, because you can say the same thing about Christianity.
That's not true. That's not true, because the Quran is their main document, and that was written 500 years later after the events. I'm not saying, it's newer, therefore it's false. I'm saying there's not a continuity.
It wasn't written 500 years
Totally, this is now really argumentative. It's combative. It's not collaborative in any stretch of the imagination. I think probably Doug's getting tired at this point. And there's no meaningful progress. It's just argument. It's not.
Maybe,
yes, it was.
Maybe a couple.
Yes, it was.
Maybe 100 or 200.
Yes, it was.
False. No, Muhammad was born in 570, and the Quran wasn't written until like the 600s. It's like, and if you read the Quran, it says
that's 30 years.
10.
What?
What did you say?
The events of the Gospels happened in 30 AD.
Oh, you're comparing to the Gospels. I see what you're saying. Okay.
No, so this is what the Muslims claim. The Muslims claim Allah purposely deceived everyone and made it look like Jesus died. That's why everyone worships Jesus. But then Muhammad, after purposely deceiving everyone, he waited 500 years to give the Quran to his messenger, Muhammad, which is totally wrong. And they're saying, 500 years later, what happened 500 years ago?
Hey, Kyle, I agree with you. Islam's false. This is not an issue. I'm just pointing out that there are
Okay, but the
it's
diversity
that it's very reasonable to say, just like Mormonism was created as an offshoot of New Testament, Old Testament, just like Islam was created as an offshoot of the New Testament, Old Testament, Christianity is an offshoot of the Old Testament.
Absolutely not. It's the
Well,
continuity.
you even admitted this because of the prophecies. They use
There's no prophecies of Joseph Smith or Muhammad. There's no prophecies of them.
Actually, Muslims would disagree with you.
Well, where in the Quran?
I forget what they say, but they actually say the Old Testament prophesies Muhammad. I disagree. I am with you. I disagree with them, but they would say that. But the point is, I'm just making a what's more likely argument here, that we have examples in history of people doing this all the time, and I know if you even for a second consider that Christianity is no different, you're done.
There is just as a minor point, there is Mormon prophecy of the isn't there? There's the Egyptian plates, right? That they retrofitted an awful lot of history. That definitely is a thing.
Mormons have the best evidence. Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And why you would push back hard against that, but to me it just seems very reasonable.
That's reasonable. That's your your arbitrary standard.
But again, we share this. You and I are the same. We both look at Mormonism and we say it's obvious what Joseph Smith and his followers did. You and I are the same.
Are there any prophecies is there any prophet? Like you're saying, there's different opinions, therefore no one is true. There can never be any religion. Every religion is false because
I'm not saying that.
Well, you were an atheist. You believe every religion is false.
Yes, I believe but I'm not saying because of this reason it has to be.
That's what, but you were saying that, oh, look at these powerful men. What's more likely? Which is totally arbitrary.
Yeah. So I'll tell you what would change my mind, and we got to wrap this up, I think. How long have we been going? Oh, wow. Time flies when you're having fun. Now you're going to think this is silly, but for me, what doesn't convince me is these old texts and even old traditions. What would convince me is something today. Okay. And a lot of Christians actually appreciate this because they say they've had these personal testimonies and experiences of today that they can fall back on, and that it's really powerful to them. And I'm asking for something similar, except my standards are very high. I don't lower my standards for Jesus. And one of my standards is or one of the pieces of evidence that would shatter my worldview. And I'm not joking. I actually believe this would shatter my worldview.
Okay.
And it's based off of Old Testament scripture.
Yeah.
In 1 Kings 18, it says that Elijah watered down wood and was taunting the worshipers of Baal and other religions, taunting their God, saying, hey, light up your stacks of wood, your altars, and I will call my God to do the same. In fact, I'm even going to douse my wood with fire, with water first, and then call upon God. And Elijah did it. And fire came down, and the wood started lighting on fire, even though it was water soaked. And then afterwards, God even killed these people, where they died, and it's quite the story. 1 Kings 18. Anyhow, I just asking for what Elijah did. So I'm asking you, Kyle, to be like Elijah, and on my behalf, call upon God to light this up right now.
No, that's funny because this is a total gotcha non-argument. Jesus talks just about this. If you won't believe the prophets and Moses, then it doesn't matter if a man rose from the dead. It's not a logical problem. Even if God did that, you would reinterpret it in your paradigm. Oh, there's some logical explanation.
You know what? You could be right. You could be right.
You really think if there was just light on fire, you'd be like, oh yeah, I got to become an Orthodox Christian. No, you would continue because it's not a logical problem. It's a problem in our heart.
It's interesting that he didn't even try. I mean,
you could be right. Yes, you're right. You could. It's possible. Beautiful. Then make them sit with that.
I mean, I just like the idea that. I mean, I would have perhaps had some respect for him if he'd have attempted. I mean, he didn't even pray to God. He didn't even attempt to ask God. As if he assumed that wouldn't work, and that this was therefore going to be a gotcha moment. Well, why did he assume that it wouldn't work?
If it's a problem in our heart, then it's not testable at all. There's no evidence that anyone could see that would legitimately shift their confidence.
Yeah, because they I mean, and again, they attribute that, God hardening our hearts. I mean, God spends an awful lot of time hardening hearts, it seems, and making us not want to believe. somewhat
It's all-
undermining free will, but that's a whole other thing.
God cholesterol?
Be right, but you know we
Only
could
the
always
low
try it
density.
and see if you're right. And if you're right, you have my permission to say I told you so.
No, but we don't look to signs and wonders for our Christianity. I mean,
You don't?
demons can do signs. No, we don't. No,
We don't
not-
look to the resurrection.
We need. Okay, no, because those it needs to be in continuity. Again, signs and wonders. Oh, these like the Catholics are so obsessed with Fatima and all this.
Why did Jesus do
random
the
stuff.
miracles he did?
Because they were the fulfillment of the prophecy. They have their meaning because of the Old Testament. A brute fact of a miracle
But
does not prove anything.
do you believe some people followed Jesus and believed in Jesus because of the miracles he did?
Yeah, but again,
That's all I'm asking.
okay, yeah. No, I'm saying, but would you really? If that really did, you think I'd be like, oh yeah, I guess I gotta reject my.
I am
entire
being
YouTube
dead serious.
channel.
I'm not joking. This is not, and I think a lot of people understand this. And I can even make it more dramatic. My sister died 2 years ago. Okay, I know she's dead, and she died a horrible death of MS. She's in the ground and she's rotting as we speak. If you and I were to go to her cemetery, you pray in the name of Jesus, just like what Jesus did to Lazarus, and she came bubbling up through the dirt after you made that prayer, my whole worldview would be rocked. I would start trying to figure out which version of Christianity is true. Should I become Orthodox or Catholic that day? I'm serious. I'd probably have to change my whole YouTube channel. I am not lying to you. And I think every human being listening right now who might push back and say, well, yeah, Doug, but that could be a demon or whatever. I don't care. Naturalism is false at that point, in my view. I'm done. Do you blame me for being done with that? No, that is good evidence, especially if it's just not me and you alone. We got a bunch of people. In fact, if my sister was to walk around town, I was at your funeral, and here you are.
So do you realize that like Jesus, like the apostles all saw Jesus could do these miracles, and yet Peter still denied Christ 3 times. It's not like he literally saw it. He believed in Christianity, but he still rejected Christ. It's not like, even if that did happen, it's not.
Well, you know what? And that might happen to me too. But at least I'm not doubting that naturalism is false, right? Did Peter not doubt that? No. So I still have the free will to reject Christ. But I guarantee you, my worldview, my current worldview would be smashed, splattered on the wall. It's gone.
I think that's a good spot to end for today. We've gone over about 2 hours. And yeah, it's just an emphasis on having quality criteria, quality tests, and being open to change your mind based on evidence.
Yeah.
Any last words,
Definitely
anyone?
No, I think Pinecreek did super well, especially at the beginning. I think it went on too long. And I'm not just saying that from. I think and again, this is one of the reasons why I think doing these things in a sort of performative fashion on a YouTube channel, like it has different motivating criteria. So I think in an SE conversation, it would definitely have been worthwhile ending that a lot sooner. And maybe the motivations to continue it weren't entirely based on the quality of the dialogue. But no, I have to really commend Doug at the beginning of this, especially. He was just asking just fantastically paced questions, well pointed and very calm, and just really going through it methodically. And I really hope Kyle learns some more. Learns to control his frustrations, I think, a little bit better, and to try to actually engage in some of the discourse rather than react to it emotionally. I think as Matt was saying, I think he's a smart guy, and I really, really would like to see him in a better position to have these conversations, because I think it would be a more interesting conversation than I think what he was able to muster after clearly a long day of talking for a long time. So yeah, it was good, really good stuff.
Yeah, thank you for doing this one. I thought it was a really good example of something where someone came in hot and it was handled very well. And it would provide the entertaining factor, but also provided a good example of how the thought process goes and what's going on with the epistemology of everybody in the conversation. So,
Right.
Yes. And if you enjoy SE at all, feel free to support us on Patreon, streetepistemology.international. And you can also We're also going to be doing a SEI donor hangout probably in December. So if you want an invite to that, we'll be talking to donors for that. Like Anthony will be there and a bunch of other people. So feel free to do that. And also I'll post a link in the chat about if you want to see other content to review, feel free to fill out this form and we'll review it.
Everybody wave so the AI will take us out.